Hello, hello. We were talking to each other just 2 seconds ago, weren't we? Yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah, glad to be speaking to you. All right, it's a good thing we're going to get this interview done. If we don't have to go a full 2 hours if we run out of conversation subjects and topics, but hey, if you want to do it, if you can ad lib and go that far, by all means, let's go to nine. Well, 7:11. We can go till 9:11 if it absolutely wants to be full 2 hours. But anyhow, I guess starting off, before I give you the chance to introduce yourself and all that, did you by any chance do anything special for the solar eclipse we just had a couple days ago?
Well, Andrew, I did some qigong, man. I found me a nice neighborhood park. Interesting enough, last moment I said, well, let me look into these glasses that everyone is, just buying from convenience stores and things of that nature. And when I couldn't find any, it was just a sign, hey, just connect with nature, which was my primary mindset going into the process anyway. And so I went to a neighborhood park for about for a whole hour from about 2 o'clock till about I don't know, almost 3:30. I just found myself cultivating with energy, man, and just having a great time being in the flow. And I felt the intense energies and was just able to embrace them.
Awesome. Well, I think you had a better time than I did. I went all the way down to Charleston, took an 11-hour train ride down there to Charleston. I looked up at the sky as well as all the people that were in the motel, around the motel pool that I was at. The was covered partially by the moon, and then, but before the totality could happen, the clouds covered the damn thing. And unfortunately, because of that, we missed totality because of the stupid clouds. I tried to do cloud bursting and all that to try to clear it to no avail. Nobody was helping me. I tried to get people to meditate in a circle with me to clear the clouds, but nobody seemed to listen. Nobody cared. It seems like everybody's down there is a devout born again Christian, so they don't believe in meditating. So that didn't work. Unfortunately, even though I did not get to see the eclipse totality because of stupid clouds, I got one swell consolation prize. I got to see my adorable 10-month-old nephew and my brother. I take seeing his adorable face, my nephew's face, over an eclipse any day, I believe. And well, as cute as that was, this eclipse ain't got nothing on the big enchilada eclipse that will be happening on April 8th, 2024, which just so happens to be my other younger brother's 30th birthday, go figure. And I know exactly where I'm going to be going for that eclipse. The path of this one that just happened and the path of that one will be crisscrossing somewhere in like the southern Illinois area. I am going to be going to that exact spot to witness that eclipse, eagerly awaiting its arrival for the next 7 years or so. And I can only imagine that the guardian angels and spirit guides and all the rest of the creator gods and all will make sure that the clouds do not obstruct my view for this one. I can't imagine that they would allow for that to happen in the path where they are both supposed to crisscross. And I'll be praying to them over and over, please do not blow it again. I don't want to miss that eclipse. And that eclipse, of course, is around the end of the Pluto and Capricorn cycle, which signals the destruction of anything that's not in humanity's best interest, as astrologers know. So that is definitely, like I said, a big enchilada compared to the one we just had, which is just a primer of sorts. So, but anyhow, enough of that. I want to give you the chance to introduce yourself. I, of course, met you at the Healing Garden party that was at the event on uh, was it 50th Street? Yeah, it was 50th Street down in West Philly. It seemed like everybody there was black. I was one of only three white guys there, but still, I didn't feel left out at all. I had a lot of fun, even though I was color of my skin seemed to make me an outcast there. It was still a lot of fun. Everybody seemed to have a lot of fun with me there as well. I really got down and dirty with a few of the rituals and all that, and your ritual was really, really a new feeling, if you know what I mean. So I guess maybe I'll talk a little bit more about what I experienced there. But hey, got your card here, Manifest Raw, the life balance expert, transformational speaker. Now's your chance to tell a little bit of your life story, particularly the stuff that got you to experience what you experience that causes you to do the stuff that you do now, and why you feel that what you do now is important from a healing, awakening, consciousness standpoint and all that, from a love-based standpoint and everything. So, and also give out your contact information as well. A lot of people do that at the end of their shows. I usually do that with my guests at the beginning. So, your life story, who you are, what you do, what you plan on doing, your contact, you got the floor.
All right. Thank you so much, Andrew. First and foremost, man, it's just an honor anytime I can share um, any information that's going to help humanity, help people in our communities. Uh, in terms of health and wellness, in terms of a greater understanding of what needs to be done in this day and time. So I also had a great time there at the Philly Healing Garden Party. Hey, man, I'm pretty sure most people there welcomed you with open arms, even if, you kind of were one of a few of our great Caucasian brothers and sisters. But, in this day and time, man, universal love is the primary energy, collective energy that needs to be communed with on the planet. So, obviously we're living in a climate where it seems like everybody is an adversary of everyone else. Liberal, conservative, black, white, Christian, Jew, Muslim, male, female, straight, gay, Democrat, Republican. You name it, everybody's playing sides, or not everyone's playing sides. That seems to be the mantra coming from media, mainstream media, and so many other places. But, it was great. It was an honor to see you there and just everyone else there a few weeks ago. But Manifest Rogin is my name. I'm from the Washington, D.C. area. It was an honor again to be up in the Philly area. A little bit about me. I've been on this healing path and personal transformation path for a while. Andrew, I was born into a family that has always been health conscious. So it was instilled in me very early on, to eat whole foods, to exercise, to cultivate a sense of virtue. We weren't vegans or vegetarians growing up. However, a balanced meal was always something that was suggested, and that was the order of the day. So that came primarily from my dad. My mom has always been more of the spiritual parent, if you will. And so we were, my brother and sister and I, we all were raised from a very, how can I say it, strong family in terms of just holistic values. And so I remember when I went off to college, of course, I embraced the fun times of college, Florida A&M University, and 1,000 miles away from D.C. You can imagine getting up, getting out, and saying, "Wow, I'm free." But I never deviated too far from my roots of healthy living, and so I always knew where the salad bar was. I always knew the basics of meditation and exercise. And so I remember around my senior year in college, I just had some shifts, some things begin to shift within me. I didn't feel the healthiest. And so I started reading magazines and journals on holistic living, meditation, herbal medicine. And I found myself being more in solitude. So by the time I finished college, my major was public relations. I said, I want to use my PR background to organize events and promote healthy and positive living. Didn't know how I was going to do that. After college, I volunteered at some holistic health associations in Washington, D.C., and met a lot of herbalists, naturopathic doctors, meditation specialists, yoga people, Qigong, Tai Chi. And after volunteering there for about a year and a half or two, I jumped right out there and started organizing events. I did a series called the Taste of Health Festival in Washington, D.C. And the first day was about, 10 a.m. to 7 p.m. We had 30 workshops on everything that you can imagine, from holistic prenatal nutrition to men's prostate cancer prevention to how to raise your children off the grid, you name it, we had it. Very successful. Second year, 1998, we had, it was a two-day conference rather, 60 workshops, about 100 vendors, and we flew people in from around the country. So after doing all of that, Andrew, I was worn the heck out, man. I was this promoter, and I was promoting everybody else and promoting the cause of holistic and natural living. However, I didn't have my own modality to stay fortified and purified and on the path myself. So I found myself losing about 10 pounds, being stressed out, borderline sick, And those kinds of events take about 9 months to maybe a year to organize. And so I said, I can't do this anymore. I have to find another way of promoting holistic living that I'm also living myself. So that's when I realized I was stressed out, burned the candle at both ends, not really getting the right amount of sleep, and I wasn't the bill of health myself. And so I gravitated towards Qigong and Tai Chi, and I said, wow, you mean to tell me there's a way of living where I can embrace a flow, the cosmic flow of life, something that is within me but beyond me, that I can align with, and I can get everything I need done that particular day. I didn't say everything I want done, but everything I need done that particular day. I can live healthy. I can foster and enhance my relationships, and I can just be a better person by being in the flow of life, being in the flow of the universe. And so I was able to slow down, live in the moment, breathe, be more mindful, and people started to notice the shifts that were going on within me. Of course, I noticed it, and then I started to naturally share that with others, family members, friends, co-workers, business partners, and it became a passion for me, and it evolved into what I do now. So now I am a mindfulness motivational speaker. I also facilitate presentations in the corporate workplace, primarily through many health insurance companies that contract with me, or I contract with them rather. Just today, I went to a Ritz-Carlton in an affluent area right outside of Washington, D.C., Northern Virginia. They had about 50 managers of the Ritz-Carlton there, and these are all stressed out people, Andrew, and I went in for an hour, talked to them about healthy living, mindful living, showed them how to enhance their breathing, how to slow down, how to be in the moment, let go of the past, let go of the future, and just embrace this very moment. And I took them through a number of different Tai Chi, Qigong exercises, and everyone had a blast. People were saying, wow, I never felt the energy like this. This was the first time I was able to really feel my energy and the energy around me from others. And so that's just a snapshot of what I do. I go around to corporations, government agencies, church groups, spiritual groups, events like the Philly Healing Garden Party, and other places, colleges, universities, and I go in and I teach people how to embrace their highest self through mindfulness practices, letting go of stress, letting go of fear, letting go of racism and all these other ills that really come from not being at one with the divine within ourselves, not being at one with the divine within others, within the divine within the universe. When we talk about that word divine, Andrew, it's really talking about a cosmic and infinite flow of energy. And so it's the same within you that is within me, that is within everyone. Unfortunately, enough of us haven't awakened to that, where we can tune in to that cosmic energy, and we see the same within Manifest as we see within Andrew. We have more and more people who are awakening to that. However, when we see all the ills and the racisms and discriminations and just the, how can I say it, the outdated, antiquated behavior that's rooted in self-preservation, that comes from a lack of awareness, a lack of awareness of oneness, that we're all one consciousness. We're showing up, we're manifesting ourselves in our own incarnation objectives based off of what we came here to do, but we're still all one. And so I've also started something many years ago called the Universal Love Movement, something I'm very passionate about. Started in 2006 at a place called Sangha in Tacoma Park, Maryland. And with that, for many years, we had monthly gatherings during the full moon. With about 50, 60 people gathered. We meditated. We did mind-body exercises like chair yoga and Qigong, Tai Chi. We always had a theme relative to that month, and we brought people from all walks of life together. I took a brief break with that, Andrew, for about a year, and now we've shifted to a weekly format here in the Washington, D.C. area. My goal is to eventually have universal love movement gatherings in places like Philadelphia, Baltimore, New York, Chicago, Atlanta, LA, you name it, around the country and around the world. Because universal love, that expanded heart center, that expanded heart consciousness is one of the highest vibrations possible. And so the more people that can embody that, can live that and share that with others, we will see major shifts, quantum leaps taking place in the very near future. So, and so when I use my Qigong, I'm not just using it, I'm not just cultivating within myself, I'm not just sharing that in the workplace, but from a wider, more expanded view, I am excited about promoting and helping as many people as possible move from self-preservation to a sense of self-realization, and that we're all one, coming from the same source, and that it is time that we actually embrace universal love as our birthright and as our primary way of living.
No question. I try to do the same thing myself on my path. And let's spend a little time talking about some of the specific arts that you dedicate your life with, instructing and all that. Tai Chi and Qigong. Well, let's take it one by one. First of all, Tai Chi. I do take Tai Chi myself every Monday from 7 to 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I take Tai Chi in nature lovers environment around the Pennypack Ecological Trust. I'm one of the youngest people there, as a matter of fact. Seems like everybody's senior citizen there except me. And but the thing about Tai Chi, they call it the granny martial art, and I mean it's not like the kind of martial art that some of the moves are the poses and all are moves that you would see a martial artist and other martial arts do when they're like attacking or defending against someone. But unlike martial arts, you're just moving in place for the most part to put yourself in poses that allows you to allow the chi, or what the Japanese also call the ki. Chi is Chinese, Japanese is ki. There's other terms and all that. Prana also in the Vedic tradition and all different terms and all that. But anyhow, I'd like you to. Well, I think Tai Chi's done a very good job for me. I think it's done me well, and I intend to keep taking it. I'd like you to, for those that aren't familiar with it, if you know anything about the history, by all means, talk about the history of it, the general who, what, when, where, why, and how of Tai Chi. And when I say how it works, and anybody who's a skeptic who sees how can moving your body like that actually do you any good? You're just moving your body in different positions. What good is that going to do? Well, they obviously don't believe. They don't understand how Chi energy works, and I'd like you to knock some sense in those people and enlighten them and explain how it works. So Tai Chi, its history, how it works. You got the floor.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Tai Chi is considered an internal martial art system, and it is actually the most widely practiced mind-body exercise around the world. Oftentimes we're seeing people with yoga mats, and yoga obviously is well practiced around the world. However, that it does require in many cases a mat, and it's primarily done oftentimes on the mat. Whereas Tai Chi, you can find any park, you can find any open area. No mat is needed. You just need to be in some comfortable clothes and have at it. So you oftentimes will see people in parks, whether it's Philly, D.C., or anywhere around the world. In many cases, of course, in China and other places, people are first thing in the morning or throughout the day, they're out doing these slow, graceful, moving exercises. So Tai Chi is a major health, how can I say it, maintenance exercise system. It's practiced primarily today as a health maintenance exercise system. It started hundreds of years ago as a internal martial art. There are two schools of thought on its origins. One is I'm not going to say more myth. It's legend, if you will. The San Feng started um, Tai Chi by observing a snake and a bird, and from those slow, graceful movements, he actually decided he was channeled movements as well from watching those two animals. And there are many people who align with that perspective on the origins. Now, from a more historical, documented perspective, the Qin family started Tai Chi hundreds of years ago, I believe in the 17th century, and that particular family is known as the mother family of Tai Chi. You have many different forms. That the primary forms today are Qin, Yang. There's two Wus, and there's a Sun style rather. And so Qin is the original style, based off of that perspective on the origins of Tai Chi. Yang, which is the most widely practiced style of Tai Chi, came from Qin. And so the Qin form has a bit more martial arts emphasis to it. When you look at it, it looks a little bit more overtly martial arts in nature, where Yang, and oftentimes when we say Yang, most people pronounce it Yang, but the Asians themselves, the Chinese themselves, always pronounce it Yang. So if anyone's listening in the future, that is the reason why I use their pronunciation, if you will. So the Yang form of Tai Chi is the most widely practiced around the world. You have the 24 movements, and then you have the 85. 24 is the short form, 85 is the long form. And so within that, you see all these slow, graceful movements. Tai Chi itself means supreme ultimate, the grand supreme ultimate. And the reason it was called the grand supreme ultimate is that you oftentimes will find people well into their 80s, 90s, early 100s practicing Tai Chi. The more external forms of martial arts, karate, jiu-jitsu, Muay Thai, kickboxing, those more external forms of martial arts, after the 50s, it's very hard to practice those forms because all of the wear and tear on the physical body, because it's more of an external form of martial arts. Where Tai Chi, as an internal form, there are no limits to how long you can practice Tai Chi. It is just as important. It is just as influential in health maintenance and spiritual development as it is in martial arts. So that's why it's considered the supreme ultimate. It's being able to use the least amount of energy for the maximum. So with that, one is always cultivating their energy as opposed to depleting their energy. And so with Tai Chi, from those slow, graceful movements, you're actually exercising and enhancing and strengthening every bone, every muscle, every joint, ligament in the body, from those forms, 24 and the 85, as well as the other styles of Qin and Wus and Sun. Tai Chi also comes from what's known as Qigong. Oftentimes people will see Qigong and think Tai Chi, or people will see Tai Chi and sometimes think of Qigong. Qi means energy, Gong means cultivation. So Qigong is the parent of Tai Chi. Tai Chi is an offspring of Qigong. If you think of a tree, Qigong is the tree and Tai Chi is a branch. As a matter of fact, Qigong is the foundation for all of traditional Chinese medicine: acupuncture, moxibustion, Chinese herbal medicine, nutrition system, so forth and so on. So Qigong is an ever-expanding system of energy exercises, energy cultivation exercises that you can do sitting, standing, moving, lying down, you name it. It's all about cultivating one's energy. And so when we talk about cultivating energy, Andrew, we're talking about through the breath. There's three primary ways of refining one's life force, one's energy. Through the breath, the breathing, also posture, and also the mind. So by enhancing and refining one's breathing, enhancing and refining one's posture, and enhancing and refining one's mind, there are infinite applications and ramifications for one's life force, where throughout millennia, there have even been high-level Qigong practitioners who have been able to do extraordinary, phenomenal abilities, if you will. Not to sound hocus pocus, any of that, but you can just imagine if energy is everything, our thoughts are energy, our emotions are energy, energy in motion, walking, talking, thinking, you name it, the food that we eat is energy. If everything within us, around us, everything in the cosmos, the master universe is energy, then what are we doing with our energy? And so people who master their energy and master the energy around them from nature's, their connection with the sun, moon, and stars, their connection with the food source, with trees and all aspects of nature, those who are able to cultivate the connection within themselves and all those various different entities I just spoke of at very high levels, they oftentimes will do things that people consider supernatural, but it's just natural, and so we're so stressed out. Many of us rather, are living on such a low vibration based off of what is fed through us with TV that we're just, meant to just work 9 to 5 and come home and go to happy hour and just look forward to Friday, and Sunday's here too soon. And then most people have heart attacks on Monday because Monday came back too soon. When people are living in a matrix of that sort, their vibration, their frequency is very low, if you will. And so all of these vices, the neighborhood fast food place, the neighborhood liquor store, the neighborhood, you name it, all of these things become ways of living in comfort because people are living in so much pain. And so when we talk about Qigong and Tai Chi, we're talking about modalities that help one ascend to their very highest potential of being. And so with Qigong again is the tree. And so one can be sitting down in a meditative posture in a chair or in a lotus posture and actually cultivating and refining one's life force by using the power of the mind, where they're circulating the energy in the body through channels, through meridians. We call this the Microcosmic Orbit, where you can actually bring the energy from one's belly down to their root, cycle it back to the kidneys, and then up the back, all the way up the shoulders, all the way up the back of the head to the crown, what we call the byway, back down, passing the third eye, passing the throat, passing the heart, back down through the belly, and continue that process. We call that the microcosmic orbit. And so when we think of the universe, this is the small universe. We're the small universe. We have a master universe. Every person, every being, Andrew, you're a universe within yourself, and I'm a universe. It's been scientifically proven that 97% of what we are is stardust. Not just bones, not just ligaments, not just blood, but stardust. So our vast potential has not even been remotely touched upon as beings on this planet. And so Qigong, through the power of the mind, I can guide my energy anywhere around throughout my body. I can guide it through my heart. I can guide it through my kidneys, through my spleen, through my vital organs to enhance, to purify and fortify those organs for optimal living. I can guide, we have a phrase where it says, wherever the chi flows, wherever the mind goes, the chi flows. So whatever you think about, that's also where the mind is going. And so oftentimes we find ourselves in bad circumstances and bad scenarios because we've been thinking too much about bad things. And so when one is able to cultivate and control and begin to master one's thoughts and one's mindset, then you begin to experience magical circumstances. And so, again, through the power of the mind, power of the posture, and power of the breathing, all of those are within Qigong, which also means those are within Tai Chi. And so, it's just been a phenomenal game changer personally for me, Andrew, where it's taken me from a stressed out type A person who had a short man's complex, Napoleon complex, where I felt like I needed to do everything and anything, try to outdo everybody else, to just being fully content and comfortable within my own being and embracing with the cosmic flow of life. I remember, Andrew, in the 90s, and this was even before I got into Tai Chi and Qigong, because I started that in 2000. I remember the mid to late 90s when I started to embrace a vegan lifestyle, meditation. I was volunteering at these holistic health associations. All of these shifts were taking place in me on a regular basis. And I remember I had this brief phase where I felt like everything around me I was at one with. I was at one with the entire cosmos, that if I was walking down the street, there was no separation between me and that tree. There was no separation between me and anyone around me, regardless of the demographics that they try to align themselves with: black, white, Hispanic, Latino, Native American, straight, gay, whatever, male, female. I was at one with everything. And I tell you, man, it was the most phenomenal feeling I've ever had in my life. I'm not probably. It was the most phenomenal feeling, where it felt like if any disease came into my being, I knew how to not just eradicate it, but through that infinite flow of energy, I knew that I would eradicate it. I mean, I felt like if my thoughts were the thoughts of the universe, and so, and that's probably a, how can I say it? That it's one of those scenarios that you can't really articulate it. You can't words don't do justice, but you try to, because that's the Western society that we live in. I mean, if I was living somewhere else, in probably what's considered more Eastern-based place, Africa or one of the Asian countries, or where there was a bit more remote, we would probably be communicating telepathically. Andrew, I probably wouldn't have to even try to explain these scenarios here. But I remember telling myself, wow, I've heard about people having near-death experiences where they saw what it was like on the other side, and they said, wow, I really don't want to come back. But they did come back because they heard some angelic voice telling them that they still had work to do, so they came back. So I remember, man, as I was walking down the street, I was like, I don't want to come back from this. This is the most enlightened, elevated, cosmic state of being I've ever experienced. And so I've been on incremental level, moving, if you will, to realign with that state of being, and where it can be a more permanent state of being within my life path. So, and through my studies and my own experiences within Qigong and Tai Chi, I later learned that is a high state of being, or the highest state of being for the Qigong and Tai Chi practitioner, called Wu Wei, which means, what does it mean? I tell you, it goes beyond words, but what it means is that non-doing leads to doing, or from non-doing, nothing is left undone. And so it's this separation. So when the Chinese speak of that, they don't mean literally sit around on your behind and not do anything. What they mean is like you are like the drop of water in the cosmic ocean, or the ocean is within your drop of water, meaning that as you're moving about, there is no separation between you and nature and the universe. And so nothing can be, how can I say, withheld from you, because in this place of virtue, you don't have these contrived, how can I say it, irrelevant thoughts and desires. You're in a cosmic flow where your heart is open and you only want what's best for you. And so that state of Wu Wei, when I read about it many years later, I was like, wow, this is what I experienced in the 90s. And so one of the school of thoughts within Qigong and Tai Chi is the practitioner doesn't wake up every day to try and accomplish or attain something else per se. We work backwards. Every day, the practitioners should approach the day on what can I let go of, so that I can actually re-engage and re-embrace and realign with that inner child within me that, how can I say it, knows no black and white, knows no religion, knows no ethnicity, because he or she sees one with all, if you will. And we call that the ancient child in Taoism. Means that you're not returning to a place where you were 3 or 4, where you didn't know, to look both ways and cross the street, or know about, how to feed yourself per se, or the ways of the world. But you return to a state of purity and spontaneity, where you take your life lessons and you merge those with that inner child state of being, where you're not looking at things from a judgmental and a discriminatory point of view. So that is called the ancient child, because you're taking the wisdom of that inner child and you're merging it with the wisdom of your many years lived. And so I tell you, man, this thing is so vast, Andrew, in terms of the chi flow. I'll just stop right there. I'll let you ask some questions, but I just get excited when I talk about it. You're able to Qigong and Tai Chi. I've studied with several masters. My first instructor out of Baltimore, Shaha Infadishi Marci, Shaha Marci. He taught me the traditional way. He said, hey, man, sit down. You come to me once a week. I think it was even twice a week at times. And I would sit there in the lotus position on the mat, and I would take notes. He would dictate the assignments and the theories of Qigong and mindfulness and healthy living. And it was just like it was a transmission of consciousness. And so I got just as much, if not more, just from that absorption of that energy and that transmission than I did through any exercises. And so it was just a phenomenal experience, and shifts were taking place in my life. And this was around 2000, 2001, 2002 that I studied with Infadishi Shaha Marci. And he laid the foundation. And he told me at that particular time, he said, because I mentioned the word guru, and he said, well, let's revisit this. He said, there are no real gurus. He said, life is your guru. He said, that's a word that's been bastardized, that's been manipulated for monetary reasons, for egoic reasons. And he said, that doesn't mean you don't learn from others, that you can't hold others in a sense of reverence and high esteem. He was simply saying that life is the real guru. Study with those that you are drawn to study with and learn from, but never hold them so high up on a pedestal where you lose thought on that they're going through the same process. They're going through an incarnation. They're going through an evolutionary learning curve like everyone else. They have to get back up every morning and take a dump, and shower and shave, and they're working through their karma just like everyone else. And so that resonated so strongly within me, because there was always something within me that understood that. There was a knowing within me. So it was this match when he said that, like, wow, that really resonates with me. And so from that, I've moved around and studied with other masters, and always held them in reverence, but with an understanding that this unfolding called life is meant to move you wherever you need to be. You're going to learn and you're going to study and you're going to practice with people at a particular time, but you're going to be drawn to other instructors and other teachers at other particular times. And so that was so refreshing from Infidisci. Years later, I studied with Grandmaster T.K. Shi from the Chinese Healing Arts Center. Other masters between Infidisci and Grandmaster Shi, but Grandmaster Shi was very moving in his own right because he actually, on the first day learning with him, Andrew, he said the heart is the biggest. His English wasn't the best when I was studying with him, but he was very clear. Most of what we learned the entire first 2 days was about the heart. And, I was like, well, I'm not sure why I'm learning all of this, but I'm absorbing and I'm going to listen. And so what he talked about was that you can actually get this anywhere. You can become a Qigong practitioner anywhere. But, if your heart isn't cultivated, if your heart isn't pure, the Qigong will actually work against you. He was like the most, excelled Qigong practitioners. The best Qigong instructors and masters are not the ones necessarily that are well known or known over throughout the world. He was like, the best ones are the ones with the purest hearts. So the Qigong should help you purify and fortify your heart, because the heart, most people don't know this, actually was formed or begins to be formed rather prior to the brain. Most people, when they think of the human being forming or the human being, oftentimes they put primary emphasis on the brain. But in a fetus, the heart, nature in its infinite wisdom knew to form the heart before the brain. So what does that really mean from a Qigong and Tai Chi and a healthy living perspective? It means that the heart is the real seat of intelligence. The heart sends, I think, something like 10 to 20 times as many electromagnetic impulses to the brain than the brain sends to the heart. Now, as we slow down and we really just chew on that wisdom there. So you mean to tell me that the heart sends far more information to the brain than the brain sends to the heart? So with that should tell everyone that we need to cultivate the brain, but the most important thing that we can cultivate is our hearts. And so with that, not only do we cultivate a sense of love and light within, but we cultivate a higher level of intelligence. We call that the heart mind, actually, in Qigong. We have something called an ego mind and the heart mind. The ego mind is exclusively relegated to the brain. The heart mind is the merging of the heart and the brain, and we call those two areas dantians. We have the middle dantian at the heart, the upper dantian at the third eye, lower dantian at the belly, and they're known as the three brains, or the three areas of primary intelligence in the body. The lower dantian, which is just below the navel, is where 70% of the immune system is located. And so from an intelligence point of view, we call that our gut intuition. It is a very strong intuitive place, sometimes stronger than the upper brain, because we're thinking too much with the upper brain. And so when we're thinking too much, we're preventing the information to come in from the universe and from various different sources because we're projecting out. Where the lower dantian, the lower brain at the belly, as long as it's not stuffed with too much food from fast food and all-you-can-eat places, it has a very high level of intuition there. Then we have the middle dantian, which has the strongest level of intuition. And then we have the upper dantian, the pineal gland, which is an incredibly strong level of intuition as well, pituitary and pineal gland. And so this thing called Qigong, man, is phenomenal. I could go on and on. But I like to ask you, what did you feel when you were doing the exercises with us a few weeks ago at the Philly Healing Garden Party?
Well, I felt alive. I felt refreshed. I felt well, in general, pretty good. I mean, the fact that it was done on the grass and in the blazing sunlight made it all the more better. We usually do Tai Chi indoors, which I mean, I want to do it out in the open, but a lot of people there are senior citizens. They really can't seem to stand the heat. We can only really do it outside if it's like a lukewarm type temperature, if you know what I mean. But I really, it was new. The things that you did were different than what we did. I mean, what you were doing with us, is that Tai Chi or Qigong, or can it be considered either or, what you were technically doing with us on that day?
That's great. It's more Qigong oriented. We did a form called, well, we did some exercises within a form called the 8 Pieces of Brocade. We also did what's known as Tai Chi Qigong. It's kind of a hybrid of the two, where many of the Tai Chi exercises are the martial arts applications are taking out removed from the movements rather, and they're done exclusively for health maintenance and spiritual cultivation. And so what that does then is it takes a lot of the external movement from going from one side of a field to the other side, taking steps here and there, and you're doing it primarily stationary, but you're still moving. And so that is called Tai Chi Qigong, and the other name for that is Shibashi. So we did some Tai Chi Qigong movements, and we also did some 8 Pieces of Brocade, and then we did some other basic movements of cultivating the energy from the sun and the earth and things of that nature. So it was kind of a free-flowing of a number of different Qigong-based forms.
Yeah,
absolutely. And so, go ahead.
I felt really good doing it. You wanted to say something else to finish up?
Yeah, absolutely. I would say that when we think about Qigong, it is again the foundation for all of traditional Chinese medicine. So Tai Chi is a branch of Qigong, acupuncture, Chinese herb, over medicine, moxibustion, Chinese massage is also extension of Qigong. And so there are 5 elements in the school of Qigong, or in the Qigong philosophy and principles. Earth is one. And so we were connecting with the earth. You talked about having your feet on the ground barefoot. It was great. I had my shoes on that particular day. Interesting enough, for the solar eclipse, I was barefoot, connecting with the earth there as well. In most cases, when I'm out in those fields, man, I'm really trying to be barefoot. I'm not sure what happened that particular day, but I was still in the flow. So the earth element, really, which is actually the element that aligns with this time of the year, late summer, is the earth element, and which corresponds to the spleen organ. So, interesting enough, we're having this conversation. We're talking about the earth, connecting with the earth. So late summer is all about the earth element in Qigong and Chinese medicine, and the spleen element. The spleen is always about grounding, feeling fortified, secure, trusting, knowing that there's a cosmic order, not just on the planet, but also in one's life, and embracing that. Earth is an element. We also have, in the fall season, which is right around the corner, the metal element. So when you think about earth, within the earth you have metals. So earth nourishes and supports metal. So the spleen from the late summer, Indian summer, supports and nourishes the metal and the lungs of the fall season. So the fall season, which would be right around the corner, aligns with the lungs. And so oftentimes people will get sick when the weather shifts and we no longer have these 90 and sometimes even 80-degree days, and we drop down in the 60s and 50s, a lot of people will get colds and other bouts of discomfort because they haven't started to shift within themselves, eating more seasonal foods, moving away from cold drinks to warm teas and things of that nature. And also just doing exercises to fortify the lungs, and even wearing clothes that fortify the lungs. So the lungs correspond to the fall season. And again, it's the metal element. And then from there, we travel to the winter season, which is a little further away from us there. And that corresponds to the water element and the kidney organs. So the kidneys and the winter season really aligns with a still time of the year. And from that, the kidneys have a tremendous amount of importance. When one has strong kidneys, usually they have strong sense of well-being because the kidneys correspond to what we call Jing in Qigong and traditional Chinese medicine. We have 3 treasures that I get to a little bit later on. So from the winter season and the kidneys and the water element, we then move to the spring, which is the aligns with the wood element. And so when we think of metal, coming back to metal, if you look at a car first thing in the morning, about 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning, what are you going to see on the car? You're going to see dew, which is water. So the metal of the fall season nourishes the water of the winter season. And then the water of the winter season nourishes the wood of the spring season. When it rains, obviously, you have trees to grow, plants to grow. So wood of the spring season. Then the wood of the spring season nourishes the fire of the summer season, which we just had. And the fire of the summer season, when we think of a fire, we have particles that come up and then land back down into the earth, nourishes the earth, which is the season that we're in now. So every season has an organ that corresponds to that season and an element. So the spring corresponds to the wood element and the liver, and then the summer corresponds to the fire element and the heart. And then, of course, we're in the late summer, which corresponds, as I stated earlier, the earth element and the spleen. So it's a tremendous, Qigong and its many principles and philosophical manifestations is just a tremendous school of infinite wisdom. And so, when we think about Qigong, I would say, and perhaps I'm biased here, it is probably the most important modality for personal transformation and collective transformation on the planet. And that's no knock against yoga. Yoga is phenomenal. I do yoga from time to time. It's phenomenal. But even people who do both, they'll oftentimes say Qigong is more apt to be the most influential modality for personal and collective transformation. The reason being is that you don't need a mat, you don't need to twist and turn and so forth and so on. You simply need to actually start the process of focusing your energy and refining your energy by way of the breath, by way of your posture, and by way of your mind. And so that means people can say, okay, Manifest Andrew, and we find 5 or 10 other folks. Let's meet in 10 minutes. Let's go outside and do some Qigong. Even though it's getting dark, we'll find a place and we'll just go outside and Qigong. You can have your shoes, whatever shoes you have on now. You can take your shoes off, so forth and so on. We can do Qigong. As great as yoga is, it is not that easily accessible, if you will. And so with that, you're going to begin to have great shifts within within humanity. The more people that begin to align with Qigong, because Every human being, Andrew, you have a personal energy field called your aura. I have a personal energy field called my aura. Every human being has a personal energy field known as their aura. When you're more attuned with energy by way of Qigong or yoga and meditation, you can begin the process of tuning into people's auras, reading people's auras. Even if you can't see the light around the aura, you can actually tune in and access the information of that person's aura. So Qigong is just a wonderful thing, man. I tell you, it's the magic within my life, and I'm just so excited about sharing it with others. So, man, to hear that you're into Tai Chi, that you practice Tai Chi, and again, Tai Chi is a form of Qigong, so you're right in the flow, the cosmic flow. It's phenomenal. I just want to encourage you to continue to do that, man, and share the good energy with all those you come in contact with. How do you feel once you, generally speaking, after you do or while you're doing Tai Chi?
Well, it's interesting. I mean, even when I first started doing it, I mean, I'm thinking I'm going to have to watch the master as I'm doing it to make sure I do the right moves. But I found that no, that's really not the case. The energy is flowing around everybody in the environment, which is making it easier for you to do the moves. I mean, there are some quirks here and there that you don't do the moves perfectly, but it's quite very, very easy to recover, I've discovered. And best thing to do if you mess up the move, forget about it, just move on and keep going, because thinking about messing up a move is only going to make things worse for you. So that's a good way of going about it. And same thing with yoga. I've also benefited greatly from doing yoga. Do yoga Saturdays from 8 to 9 in the morning, and I feel it's also done me well. But I think maybe Tai Chi. I'd probably take that Tai Chi over yoga for the same reasons that you've said. No offense to my yoga instructor, that guy David Hem, who I interviewed not that long ago about yoga. But you mentioned the whole thing about attire that you wear when you do Tai Chi. Now, one might make the argument, without question, and I talked about this with my the guy who I interviewed yoga. The best way to do Tai Chi or yoga is flat out naked, no clothes. That's probably the best way to keep the chi going. I mean, do it as the Greeks did in the Olympics. I recently read Eric von Daniken's book about the gods of ancient Greece and all that, and he mentioned a few things about how everybody in the Olympics did the Olympics naked, and nobody thought anything weird of it, and nobody was ashamed about it. I mean, but in practice, would you have problems as an instructor with people doing it naked, aside from the fact that it's not socially accepted? Are there maybe flaws with it that suggest maybe that's not really the way to go? Am I mistaken in saying it may be the best way to do it?
Well, I mean, that's a phenomenal question, man. I might have to look into and maybe we'll market in the future, man. But, in all seriousness, I think if we were in a more indigenous, what we consider indigenous area, that wouldn't be a problem at all. And, they do Qigong, not what we would probably consider Qigong from an Asian flavor, a Chinese flavor, if you will. But when you look at the root of Qigong, energy cultivation, people have been cultivating energy as long as they've been walking on the earth. So Qigong, in its most original forms, or original at its essence, didn't start with the Asians. No offense to them, and some of them will even acknowledge that energy cultivation is energy cultivation. So that more than likely started in Africa or just anywhere around the world where human beings were. They cultivated energy with the trees, and they cultivated energy with the stars and the sun and the moon and other animals, and in their own unique ways. So I'm sure in those times, wearing some baggy clothes or certain shoes or shirts or things of that nature probably had very little relevance. It was just aligned with the cosmic flow of life in those early times. And so That being said, and when you look into ancient China, for the most part, they're always in clothing that is long and things of that nature. So, but I look at Qigong again from the most how can I say it, ancient perspective, which an original perspective, which means simply just energy cultivation. So to answer your question, Andrew, I would say that in certain scenarios, I think it would be very liberating to be able to do Qigong uninhibited in that regard. I think it's simply a matter of being in, probably being at a retreat or in an energy field of like-minded people who are not going to get hung up on, distracted on, the physical body and looking at this person and that person, as opposed to doing the exercises. Because again, the three primary refinements of Qigong are the breath, the posture, and the mind. So when you look, and out of those three, the mind is the most important, because wherever the mind goes, the energy flows. So in that space, if people are primarily looking at body parts of other people, there's no real Qigong. There'll probably be some breathing, but it'll probably be because they're excited about what they're looking at. But and we look at the posture, maybe the way they're standing might have something to do with the way they get turned on. But again, I think without question, that can be done. I just think you have to have people who are sincere and people who are able to, who are, in the mindset like, hey, we're going into this retreat knowing that our bodies are sacred, our bodies are also pleasurable, so forth and so on, and we're not going to get distracted and be hung up on looking at each other's bodies. We're going into this from a place of being liberated and allowing these cosmic energies to permeate our beings and to absorb this energy in our most organic and authentic way possible. That way, I think it clearly can be done, man.
Okay. Also, the thing you say about Qi goes where the mind flows. Some people would find that somewhat controversial. That you should look at it as a bit of a mind exercise. Just ask George Kavasilis. He's very big on the whole idea that it's not in our best interest to go with our third eyes, our third eye chakras, our pineal and pituitary gland area, because that is in the head. That's in the mind. The powers that be, they want control of our minds. He asserts it's better to go with the heart at all times. I mean, don't get me wrong. People can have a lot of fun going with parts other than the heart. I mean, I've been very critical of George in that regard. I mean, I tell him, I say, if you can just go with the heart all the time and have fun and not get bored, more power to you. But since variety is the spice of life, you want to try to utilize the other chakras besides the heart. And I'm sure that people have the ability to use their minds and not in such a manner that's got enough willpower to not allow for the powers that be to control of it. But someone would hear you say where mind flows, Qi goes, who is follows the Kavasilian ideology, would say, well, shouldn't you be saying that Qi goes where the heart flows? I mean, wouldn't it make more sense to go with the heart? I mean, do you beg to differ, perhaps?
Great question, Andrew. Appreciate you asking the question. And so that brings up something I mentioned earlier about in Qigong, we have three Dantians, which are really the three minds, if you will, the three brains. In chakras, in the chakra system, they have the 7 chakras. What in Qigong and Tai Chi, we have the 3 Dantians. And those 3 Dantians cover those same 7 areas. The Chinese just simplified things in the threes, in many cases, 3 treasures, 3 Dantians, 3 powers, things of that nature. So to answer your question, we have a belly mind, we have a heart mind, and then we have the upper mind, which is in the brain. And so when we, from a Qigong point of view, and even Tai Chi point of view, when we say mind, we're talking about all 3 of those minds. So we're talking about the heart, we're talking about the belly, and we're talking about the upper mind. So that's why the breathing is so key in Tai Chi and Qigong, because if my breath is not aligned with the movement, then my mind is not truly in the movement. If the heart mind is not aligned with the movement, then the seat of intelligence is not aligned with the movement, as well as the upper mind. So thank you for asking that, and I probably should have clarified that. But yeah, we talk about the three minds: the heart mind, the belly mind, and the upper mind. And you're absolutely right, because oftentimes from a Western point of view, when we use that word mind, it can quickly be relegated to the brain. And as we know that mind and brain are two different things. Brain is just in the head, where mind is really your entire apparatus. It's the heart, the belly, it's the upper brain in the head. It's the cells in the body, the trillions of cells in the body. It's the blood, it's the organs. All of the organs have their own intelligence. The spleen aligns with trust and order from a positive standpoint, but from a negative point of view, the spleen. When we worry and we have anxiety, that directly affects the spleen. When we have courage, we fully inhale all of life and what it has to offer, the goodness of life, or we stand our ground and we take it. If you can imagine, if you're in a flight or fight syndrome, you say, I'm through running. The first thing somebody's going to do is they probably take a deep breath to fortify themselves. So the lungs correspond from a positive standpoint to courage. From a negative standpoint, from sadness. So you'll find someone who is sad, they'll take a very short inhale and a very long exhale. It's like taking an inhale and then slouching your shoulders and taking an exhale. So the lungs are weakened. And the same vice versa with the kidneys. The kidneys are it regulates water. So a sense of calm nourishes and fortifies the kidneys. Anything that we're fearful of depletes the energy in the kidneys. If you can imagine a martial arts blow or a kidney shot from a boxer, when you're hit in the kidneys in a very strong way, oftentimes people don't get up. So the kidneys will take all of the wind and even some of the energy, a lot of the energy out of our being. So we'll fear out of all the negative emotions will actually stagnate and deplete us where we can't move. Then when you look at the liver corresponds from a positive standpoint to a sense of kindness. That's why during the spring season, people would do a liver cleanse, because liver also aligns with anger and frustration. So anything that we're holding on to, we're negatively impacting the liver. So during the spring season, people oftentimes do a liver cleanse so that they can let go and spring forward. Then we talk about the heart. The heart, from a positive sense, is love and joy, but from a negative sense, a sense of hatred, cruelty, and impatience. And so all of those organs have intelligence. Every organ, from a Qigong standpoint, we say has its own intelligence. The heart has its own intelligence, the spleen, so forth and so on. The kidneys has its own intelligence. And these organs correspond to the other organs as well. That's why we have that nourishing and supporting cycle where the lungs support the kidneys support the liver supports the heart, and the heart supports the spleen. And then we have a controlling cycle where when things are really out of whack, when we know how to use the cycle correctly, the kidneys will control and neutralize the intense heat. Say somebody is totally animated and exercised and totally just off kilter, and you can't control that person. Well, that they have too much fire in the heart. Well, if they know how to use the kidneys, which is water, they can actually they can neutralize the excess heat in the heart. So I say all that, meaning that the organs have their own intelligence and they correspond with each other. The dantians in the body, each brain has its own intelligence, the heart mind, the belly mind, and the upper mind. So when we talk about mind from the Qigong standpoint, we're not talking about in the head, we're talking about the entire physiological, state of affairs within our body. Everything has its own intelligence within the being. So in Tai Chi, when we're doing the movements, we're not just doing it with the arms and the legs, we're doing it with the entire body, because the entire body is the mind.
Thank you. Interesting thing you said there that the spring is one of the best times, well, the beginning of the spring, I would think, to do a liver cleansing because that season correlates with the liver. So best time, I mean, any time to clean the liver is a good time, but at the beginning of the spring would be the best time, I would think. Can you quickly reiterate which season correlates with which um, body organs so people know, okay, if I want to set time my organ cleansings around this season, this is the time to do it. So it's spring is the liver, winter's the kidneys, fall and summer. What would that be?
Absolutely. Fall is the lungs,
The lungs.
if you will. So let's start where we are right now. Late summer. Late summer is the earth element. That's why we were out there connecting with the earth at the Philly Garden Party. Take your shoes off, anybody, if you're listening to this pretty soon. Up just before the change of the seasons in the fall, I would say get out, man, and connect with the earth. Take your shoes off as long as it's not too cold. Connect with the earth. Feel that solid grounding source. So the late summer, again, is the earth element and the spleen organ. The spleen deals from a positive standpoint, feeling grounded, feeling secure, trusting, and knowing that everything is in order. From a negative point of view, when we worry too much, if our spleen is not fortified, we'll find ourselves worrying too much and also having an anxiety when we're not grounded and feeling fortified. So strong spleen from the earth element in the late summer nourishes the lungs of the fall season, which is coming up starting in September. So the fall season, again, deals with the lungs and also the metal element. And so within earth, you find metal. So from the lungs and the metal of the fall season, we nourish the kidneys and the water in the winter season. So if you look at metal, car first thing in the morning, you'll find water. And so within the metal nourishes the water. And so the winter season, you want to fortify your kidneys. You want to eat oftentimes black rice, vegetables that are very dark in color, things of that nature. Really strengthen yourself. Drink plenty of water, warm fluids to strengthen the kidneys, and even slow down and really just be still. Backtrack just for a moment. During the fall, it's a great time to really do a lot of breath work, energy work relative to the lungs, deep breathing, meditation more because that's the process where things begin to slow down in the fall season, and hence the word fall. So as we begin to slow down, you want to begin to breathe more. You want to begin to fortify the lungs. You want to begin to, I would even say, make sure that you eat far less mucus-oriented foods and drink warm fluids, things of that nature. So, and again, going back to winter, the water and the kidneys. Then from the winter, the water and the kidneys nourish the wood of the spring season. The spring is the wood season. Water nourishes wood and the liver organ. Liver, from a negative standpoint, people who have toxic livers are very irritated consistently, frustrated very easily, and they hold on to a lot of grudges. They're just not willing to let go of the damn thing. So when people have purified livers and they're very free-flowing livers, they're very easygoing and they're kind by nature. So, if you find yourself holding on to a lot of stuff, that's an indication that your liver is in need of cleansing, purification, fortification. So from the liver and the wood, and so the growth of the spring season nourishes the heart and the fire of the summer season, when everything should be in full bloom. We're moving about, man. We're getting things done. We're manifesting it, so forth and so on. That's the summer season when we're really having the hearts open and we're really hugging trees and just around fully aligned with our goals that we planted seeds for early in the year. So the heart and the summer and the fire then nourish which we're back now to where we started, the earth element and the spleen of this late summer. So that's, and I would even say, if you want more information, Google the five element theory of traditional Chinese medicine. There's so many different applications to that really will help you just being aware of the energy that's going on within your own body relative to that season. You'll find that you need to eat certain foods during that season. You need to have certain exercise habits relative to that season that you weren't doing in previous seasons. And so the 5 elements are right within your own body. And so everything out in the universe is within us first and foremost. Mm.
Interesting. There's a couple of supplements that I buy from the InfoWars store. I mean, people have a love-hate thing with Alex Jones, but some of those things themselves are pretty good. There's a liver shield and a lung cleanse. I usually take those like around the beginning of the late fall, beginning of the winter season. I think I may want to change my schedule with that now that I've heard what you've just said. So very, very interesting there. Also, in regards to dieting, you mentioned you took up a vegan lifestyle. I mean, frankly, I can't see myself going vegan. I've certainly been eating less and less and less meat as the time goes on. But I've often said that when it comes to meat eating habits, I think that like that graph, I think it's called a hyperbole, that goes down closer and closer and closer to zero, but never reaches zero. That's what I basically see my meat eating habits getting to over time till the day I die. I'll eat less and less meat, but I'll never be able to stop entirely. But I mean, I've heard conflicting things about the things that are not meat that come from animals as to whether or not they're healthy or not. There was a recent video that came out on the Event is Coming Soon YouTube channel, and also the Spirit Science YouTube channel did a whole presentation about it, talking about how milk from cows and also milk from goats and camels, for those that drink goat and camel milk, the human body's not really supposed to be consuming something like that. And they talked about how the best way to get your calcium is leafy green vegetables, not from milk. And also this whole thing about eggs. I mean, the Spirit Science video, they actually said in that video that people who eat eggs increase their chances of getting strokes. And I'm thinking, well, that's bullcrap, because eggs, they don't have any bad cholesterol. All the cholesterol in eggs is 100% good cholesterol. You're not going to clog your arteries by eating eggs. So I don't know where they got that idea. And also Dr. Joe Wallach, who who's one of the best naturopathic doctors in the world. He eats like 6 eggs a day, and he's in his mid-70s. He doesn't even look anything like he's in his mid-70s, and he often asserts that eggs are one of the best things for the people with dementia and all that. And I mean, he also asserts it's kind of not in our best interest to stop eating meat entirely. Cut back on it, yes, but not give it up entirely. But I had another person I interviewed on my show recently talking about how eating eggs increases your chance of death, and I'm thinking, where did that come from? She didn't really elaborate on where her sources for that were. She just said, well, it's kind of stated in the science, and I'm thinking, well, I don't know where you're getting your research. So, yeah, I hear you laughing about this stuff. I mean, but also, one last thing I want to point out. Recent video I saw, some Asian doctor said 3 foods that from her research suggests you should never eat: yogurt, wheat bread, and cereal bars. I think that a lot of people would hear that, and well, maybe the wheat bread, because wheat bread, yeah, that's kind of like same class as opiates, and it can really like put your body down and suppress you and all that. But yogurt and cereal bars, lots of people would have to think that that's beneficial. But of course, when it gets to yogurt, that falls in the same class as milk, and if you believe that stuff about milk being not being as good for us as we're led to believe, then maybe you'd believe that. But it's very hard to know what to believe when it comes to what food is good for you and what isn't. And when it comes to people being vegans, I think that they're maybe taking it to a little bit of an extreme, asserting that they're going to do harm to themselves by eating something that comes from an animal. I mean, maybe humans are supposed to be herbivores and not omnivores, but to think that you can't eat something that comes from an animal, like an egg or maybe a little milk, and it's going to do a lot of harm to you, I don't know. What do you have to say about the vegan lifestyles? You took it up. Is it really the best way to go? And can you back up that claim that it would be the best way to go?
Well, hey, man, I thank you so much. And actually, even though I was a vegan for about 14 years, I'm not really now. And so, I mean, I appreciate the opportunity to speak on this. about 4 years ago, maybe five, I don't know, 4 or 5. I went back to eating some meat, just seafood, eat fish and some other seafoods and things of that nature. But that's it. I don't eat chicken, beef, or definitely not pork. But I found a need to go back to eating some meat because my body was telling me to do that. And so, I'm not one of these people that is an absolutist, and I don't think anything is absolute relative from a health standpoint. There's an old adage that says one man or woman's poison or whatever is another man or woman's cure, and vice versa. So, this whole notion that there's only one way to approach nutritional and dietary lifestyles is really bogus to me. You know what I mean? People get rooted and stuck in dogma and think that what works for them works for everybody else. When, of course, you have approaches like the blood type, where you eat for your blood type. I happen to be at this moment going through a 30-day vegan group challenge with friends and other folks, which has been doing wonders for me. I've definitely let go of some unwanted things and skin issues and things of that nature. Doesn't mean that I won't go back to eating seafood, because I realized that some of those skin irritations and other maybe discomforts really didn't have that much to do with meat. It's just that when I started eating what's considered cleaner, I started cleaning out some other things that I didn't necessarily, I was eating earlier as well, like, a lot of health bars and things that you get from a health food store. And even those things break down to a lot of sugar, and even, so-called chips, plantain and other health chips you get out of a health food store. And, all those excessive carbohydrates and things of that nature come out through your skin. So, but to answer your question, man, I totally agree with you, man. And, I know people who at one time were raw foodists and vegan. Once they started eating meat, they seemed like they got healthier. I know some people who were meat eaters. Once they went to a vegan lifestyle, they seemed like they got healthier. So everybody, literally, pun intended, is different. So no one thing is going to work for everybody else. I mean, you have so many different variables to go into what one should eat versus someone else. You have issues such as things that are hereditary, your gene pool, your family lineage, and we call that Jing in traditional Chinese medicine and Qigong. Your Jing is basically what occurred. It's the quality of the essence that went into creating you from your parents. And so if your parents had very strong health and well-being, they were strong in their health and well-being, then a strong child, in terms of their immune system, is going to come into play. If the parents were doing something else, maybe they were, who knows, high, mentally imbalanced, then a child may come that has to do a lot of extra work to try as best as possible to fortify their Jing and to strengthen their Jing. So, but oftentimes people don't take that into consideration, like, okay, what, based off of their perennial lineage, their gene pool, how does that correspond to one's dietary habits? I should be eating certain things based off of what, came through my family tree. Maybe my family tree has, they deal with high blood pressure. They deal with cancer. Cancer is showing up in the family tree, or heart disease, or things of that nature. So, okay, I'm going to stay away from certain foods by nature because of, what's going on in my family tree. Also, my temperament, of course, in Ayurvedic medicine and health, you have the three doshas. You have Pitta, Vata, and Kapha. And they say you should eat all by way of those three approaches. One is very much heat-oriented. Somebody who's very animated, and oftentimes their personality expresses itself through being, up tempo. Then you have someone on the opposite end of that, Kappa, who is I won't say sluggish, but a bit more grounded and slow and deliberate and intentional. They have more of that Capricorn energy where they say, okay, hey, I'm more organized, but I'm not just going to take off and run and do some things, so forth and so on. And you have what I believe is in the middle. So you have so many different approaches to this, and I think people have to use a common sense approach. They have to ask themselves, okay, what is good for Andrew? What is good for Manifest? Maybe at a certain point in my life, a vegan approach is best. Maybe that's not long term, but maybe, since I need to correct some things for the next several months, a vegan approach may be the best approach. And my body tells me, hey, okay, you need to go back and start eating some more fish and things of that nature. So we have to move beyond the dogma. What I found is that people get bottled down into these positions. Like, okay, if I wrote a book about raw food, then, damn it, I need to say from here on out, that's the only way. Don't take herbal supplements. Don't take herbs by anything. Anything is going to get from raw food. And you hear people sometimes saying this, and then you look at him, you're like, man, this guy doesn't look like he's the healthiest person. He looks like he needs to actually, embrace some cooked food. Or maybe even a little meter in there, because raw food is by nature, that's considered a very yin approach. There's not always a lot of fire in the food. So you see some of these people sometimes, and they'll look a little spaced out. You ask them a question, it might take them several seconds to even respond. Just from my experience. And so, for somebody, based off their personality and their gene pool, maybe the raw food is the best thing for them. Maybe they just need to be in that energy field of, eating of that nature. Somebody else, maybe primarily cooked foods is going to work best for them, but it perhaps is still primarily plant-based. And somebody else, maybe they eat a little bit more fish and chicken and a little beef. When you look at, Andrew, according to science, the people who live the longest, from my research, in Okinawa, near Japan. I don't know if Okinawa is Japan. Yeah, I think it is. But they say they have more centenarians than anywhere else on the planet Earth. And guess what these eat? They're primarily plant-based, but they eat some seafood. They eat some fish. So, hey, that to me goes beyond the philosophy and goes beyond the dogma. People will say, well, maybe, okay, healthy, vegan is the healthiest approach. Well, if by, documented proof, there are most centenarians in Okinawa, Japan, and they eat fish, but primarily plant-based, maybe we need to look into that, and so I'm not into, because you can find the science and the facts to back anything up, basically, if you want to manipulate the science and the facts to back, you up. There's a new film out called, I haven't seen it, but it's called What the Health? And, from what I've read, I haven't seen the film yet, but, they throw, the meat industry under the bus to the extent that, some of the facts are not even correct. Now, again, for me, primarily a plant-based diet is the way to go. Now, I find it neat to eat some meat, some fish, and occasionally other seafoods. That works best for me. But I think when people venture into the animal rights perspective on it, they then begin to transpose the animal rights approach over into the health approach. And those are two totally different causes and approaches to life. I've embraced animals and I have reverence for the animals as well, but I'm not going to be so, enamored with, caring for the animals that I'm going to manipulate the facts and say, okay, eating an egg a day is like, smoking a pack of cigarettes. Come on now. That defies all logic. As you said earlier, an egg has some benefits to it. Someone could say, okay, maybe it's, it has some detriments as well. But no one should, by common sense, deny that an egg has benefits. It has protein. It does, other things that strengthen the body by nature. So there are benefits to eating eggs. I mean, there are absolutely no benefits to smoking cigarettes. Much less a pack a day. So to compare the two is totally outrageous, unless you're so hell bent on promoting animal rights that begins to supersede the facts about nutrition. And that, unfortunately, is the environment in which we're living in right now, where some people are so hell bent on promoting animal rights that they're making stuff up that that is not even facts about eating certain foods. Now, I even say this before we go to the next thing, is that from my understanding, there was also an instance in that film where they talked about sugar not being nearly as bad as meat, and sugar not necessarily being a bad thing, and not having. Well, I totally disagree with that. I think meat, again, depending on the nature of the meat, the quality of the meat, can be a good thing, but you're not going to tell me that excess sugars are not a major problem in America. I mean, there's some foods with absolutely no nutritional value in it, and the only thing is sugar. I mean, when you look at soda pops, when you look at a lot of junk foods, there's absolutely no nutritional quality there, and the only thing there is sugar. So, but they said in that film that the sugar industry, that there was evidence that the sugar industry helped subsidize the film. So, they threw the meat, they made it primarily about meat being bad, but they gave sugar a pass. And so we have a lot of agendas out here. And I would say, people should take a common sense approach, not, what their mom told them or their family members told them. Say, okay, how, what approach is best for me? What approach is best for Andrew? What approach is best for Manifest? And they have, certain scientific methods on finding that. You can find out what your blood type is and what eats best for you. You can actually just try things out and say, okay, which foods better nourish and sustain and fortify me. Is it primarily a plant-based, put some seafood or some other things here and there? Then if that's where I'm feeling my strongest, then that's where I need to go. I'm not going to give 2 cents about, people making stuff up because they're thinking that, vegan lifestyle is the only way to go, and eating any animal products at all is, like going to hell and seeing Satan. Now, I will say this, that, there are obviously certain detriments to drinking milk. I would say when I was in high school, when I'm growing up, I told you I grew up from somewhat of a health conscious family. We weren't vegan, even vegetarian, but it was always, hey, you can't get up from this table unless you eat these greens, you eat this cabbage, you eat this squash, this succotash, whatever this stuff was. And sometimes I tried to hide it and ball it up, but 9 times out of 10, my parents were watching and they made me pull it out of my back pocket and eat it anyway. So, I learned to like the stuff over time. But my point is that I used to drink a lot of milk growing up, cow's milk, because my parents at that particular time didn't know that wasn't the best thing. And over time, I developed bronchitis. I remember being on a class trip, man, where I couldn't even almost breathe, man. I couldn't even eat. I couldn't even enjoy the class trip down to Orlando, Florida, because, I was barely breathing, by way of the bronchitis. And so when I got back, the doctor, I did go to the doctor, and he said, man, you know, all this dairy, this is coming primarily from milk. And that particular time, I was drinking a ton of milk, and right there, I just said, okay, I don't need to drink this anymore. So since then, I cut milk out, haven't had bronchitis, anything related to that ever since. So I know for a fact in my own personal life, milk didn't do me any good. It also gave me a tremendous amount of gas, things of that nature. And just the smell of cow's milk in this day and age is just kind of a no-no to me. It makes me want to vomit. But for someone else, from certain mountains I know over in Europe, where the milk is not genetically modified and not the cow's not fed bovine and all those other things, the milk is very nourishing. And why is that? It's because vegetation, a lot of times, a lot of the in certain mountains didn't grow in abundance. So nature, wherever we are, nature is going to provide for us. And so in those mountains over there, there are certain cultures that come from drinking the milk over in those areas and eating the yogurt over in there, where those people oftentimes approach the 100, the centenarian matrix, if you will. So nature has provided for those people in that area who didn't have maybe an abundance of certain foods. They provided certain elements coming through certain cultures and yogurts over there for them to be healthy and fortified. Even if you look at it, there's certain people near the Arctic and in Alaska and in other areas where, there's no coconuts there. There's no pineapples there. There's no, there's not a lot of fruits and vegetables that you would find in more tropical areas. So I remember hearing from someone, a raw foodist at one time, and said, well, raw food's the only way to go. And if we were all living where nature wanted us to live, near the equator, and I was like, okay, that's one of the dumbest things I've ever heard. Almost 8 billion people on the planet. How the hell are we all going to live on the equator? That makes absolutely no sense. Nature didn't even intend it that way. Nature intended some people to be up north near the North Pole in Alaska, other people to be in the West Coast and South America, Central America, and Africa, and Asia, in Australia. In every one of those areas, nature provided so that we would adapt to what we needed at that particular time. Like, for example, when you think of the people who live near the North Pole and beyond Alaska, there's certain Native Americans there where they didn't have much vegetation, where the only thing they could eat was whale meat, and so that became their staple. They ate whale probably 3 times a day. And these people were, generally speaking, were healthy, for that, generally speaking, for that area. Now, if you and I ate whale meat 3 times a day, we'd probably be dead in a month, because that's not our physiological makeup. But those people there, simply because they didn't have the lush vegetation and the coconuts and these other fruits and vegetables that we are accustomed to eating, their bodies naturally adjusted to that diet, that nutritional regimen. And so those people can eat what you and I cannot eat. So, people oftentimes don't take all of these geographical, demographical variables in play when they're talking about which foods we should eat. And it goes far beyond just simply being a vegan, being a carnivore, and all these things. And, we have to move beyond the dogma, our entrenched positions, and develop a more holistic, if we really want to call that, expanded approach to nutrition. And when we do that, we'll take into consideration all these variables, and then we'll even put a system in place that will align with that. That system will be, and hopefully in the near future, maybe it already exists. It'll take your genealogical landscape in perspective. It'll look at your hereditary nature, all those things, and say, okay, that's a category. It'll take maybe your temperament that you whatever that you're predisposed to, because that's just, generally speaking, how you show up in this world. Your natural emotional tendencies and outlook, if you're more fiery and up tempo, or if you're more laid back, it'll take all of that into consideration. It'll also take into consideration other aspects of things, illnesses that run in the family. And, it'll, in a quick amount of time, be able to say, okay, and your blood type as well. Last but not least, your blood type. And it'll be able to say, hey, based off of all of these variables here, Andrew, this is what's best for you. Maybe primarily a plant-based, but you can eat some chicken, and you can eat, and if you want to eat it, but you want to eat bacon, you want to stay away from fried food. Now, if you eat some seafood, you want to stay away from crabs, because that's going to contribute to very degenerative issues, so forth and so on. You want to eat these 3 or 4 kinds of fish. I believe there's technology out there, there's wisdom out there, but I think we have to move beyond the BS of being stuck in these dogmatic positions to be able to embrace something that's far more expansive and much more needed in this day and time relative to our nutritional outlook.
Well said. And another dogmatic issue that I want to lead into, somewhat related to food, but different nonetheless. This also ties in with like maybe Tai Chi and Qigong in regards to whether or not it's in your best or not best interest to get this involved with your Tai Chi and Qigong practices. The controversial issue of whether or not it is best to do Tai Chi, Qigong, yoga, and other martial arts and meditations and such while under the influence of a psychoactive substance, or whether it is in your best interest to do it sober. Now, a lot of people would say smoke a joint before doing yoga or Tai Chi, it enhances the experience a lot better. Well, maybe it enhances it, but some other people have asserted that when you're high on a psychoactive substance, you're actually making it harder for the metaphysical energies to manifest. People who use a psychoactive substance will think that's ridiculous. I feel a lot more metaphysical and psychedelic when I use it. But the thing is, and I'm basing this from a couple of things I've heard people say. For one, a psychic that was allegedly channeling my paternal grandfather who died in the year 2000. When I asked my grandfather, so is there anything I can do to maybe help try to communicate with you, like maybe go down to the local pharmacy and chug a bottle of cough medicine or something? And my grandfather said, well, actually, no. When you get high on stuff like that, it's actually harder for higher level consciousness entities like me to communicate with you. When you guys are sober, when you humans are sober, your frequency is such that it's easier for us to communicate and interact with you. And also, astrologer Jim Delacoli, he was talking about in some of his recent videos, like whenever people have like big significant astrological, astronomical, or even numerological days and alignments and such, like the solar eclipse, for example, a lot of people who are psychonauts who have a schedule for their drugs, so to speak, may save their psychoactive psychedelics and such for days like that. But Jim Delacoli says, well, that's not a good idea, like for the same reason my paternal grandfather gave for why it's not good to get high to communicate. It's actually, you make it harder for the metaphysical energies of that alignment, numerological, astrological alignment to interact with you in positive ways. So he asserts it's in your best interest to suck it up and learn to get high on sobriety and high on life, because that's the best way to go in terms of letting the metaphysics affect you. Now, I spoke with David Hem, the yoga guy who I interviewed. I'm sure some people that come to your yoga sessions high, do they benefit from it? Because aside from cannabis, some other drugs, it's like in terms of yoga that some people say really are beneficial is the dissociative class of psychedelics. That's PCP, ketamine, and over-the-counter DXM cough medicine. That dissociative state, some people in yoga that I've heard say is like the perfect setting to do the yoga poses. Not to mention when you're in that dissociative state, it's easier to you actually increase your flexibility. It's easier to flex your body in rather uncomfortable positions without feeling the pain of it, so you enhance the experience. But do you really enhance it? Like some people say, no, you don't, because if you're sober, then, well, nothing beats sobriety. Suck it up and learn how to do it sober, because no question about it, that's the best way to go. Or is it? Well, I'm asking you, what do you have to say about this controversial subject, doing Qigong and Tai Chi and yoga and other martial arts, high or not high?
Right. Wow, that's a great question, man. I would say the latter. I think it's better to do it sober, because those alignments, and go back to what I said earlier, there's 3 primary refinements, corrections and refinements in Qigong in particular. You have the breath, the posture, and the mind. Of course, when we talked about mind, we're talking about the heart, we're talking about the belly, we're talking about the organs, so forth and so on. So all of those entities, cells, have their own intelligence. Even within our cellular network, 20 to 70 trillion cells, you have its own intelligence, divine intelligence. So with that, I noticed that when I've done postures, man, there's certain things that shift within me. Holding the ball, if you will, become fortified like a tree, with the knees slightly bent, and just it strengthens my root and I find the energy ascending up through the body. I feel strengthened. I feel rooted. And anytime one feels strengthened and rooted, then the energy begins to rise as well. It's like the tree. The only way the tree that can ascend rather, is that it has strong roots. So energy naturally is rising from that posture. And then you have so many other movements where, like in Qigong and Tai Chi in particular, you always have those hand movements. Well, not always, but oftentimes have the hands moving. Well, the center of the palm and the Lao Gung point is a very powerful acupuncture point where you send, you emit, and you receive energy. And so with that, you're constantly moving, absorbing, sending, tuning in to universal energy by moving those palms, the center of the palms of the hands. To the soles of the feet, you have what's called the bubbling spring points, where energy naturally comes up through the earth and through the kidney point, the bubbling spring points. And as we talked about earlier, the kidney corresponds to our original essence, the gene, which is the primary nature before the chi and the shin, which are the more elevated energy. So I say all that to answer your question. There's so much going on in the body that if one is sitting down in more of a, I don't use the word passive, more of a static posture, I think it would be better for them to absorb those psychedelic substances because you are in a posture of receiving it where you're not already opening and receiving energy based off those yogic postures, those Tai Chi and Qigong postures. Whenever you're doing those postures, you're naturally opening up. You're opening up the chakras or the dantians or the meridians or the channels in the body. So you're naturally going to have shifts. I get high every time I do Qigong. I noticed that early on when I was really starting doing Qigong. I mean, I started getting into, I won't say a trance-like posture. I'm scenario. I know where I am, but there is a intense flow of energy that's moving around throughout my body. I can't even imagine being on something, but that's just me, you know. And I remember from my Qigong instructor, my second instructor, Grandmaster Shi, he was saying that folks should never do Qigong, and I imagine Tai Chi as well, on some type of, stimulant, strong stimulant or sedative, because the energy is already being shifted by way of those exercises. Now, again, if anyone wants to do those substances, I think, hey, more power to them. I mean, I think, as we know, ayahuasca and many others, I mean, they have tremendous benefit, and that's been proven. Somebody's doing it right now in the world and getting benefit, able to purge and see things about themselves. But I just don't think, even cannabis is probably the best thing to do during those exercises, because you're getting a natural high by way of the exercises themselves. Every time I teach a class or a workshop or a seminar, whether it's in corporate arena where people are totally stressed out, people are naturally high after doing the exercise for, it could be 10 minutes. You know what I mean? They like, wow, man, I feel different. If they're doing it for 30, 45 minutes on an hour, I mean, they're blissed out. We got to sit there. We got to breathe for maybe another 90 seconds or 2 minutes just to kind of fortify the energies back in the body. And that's the way where we do that with Qigong, is when the energy has been moving around through the upper dantian, the third, the pineal gland, the heart is really being expanded, the root, and so many kidneys and so forth and so on. We'll bring the energy back in and we'll ground it at the lower dantian, just below the navel, solar plexus energy, and really take several breaths there for maybe a couple of minutes just to ground the energy. I've had people walk off, man, and left their keys, forgot to pay me for the seminar or something, for the class, because they were so high with the Qigong. So I can imagine what it would be like, and there's been times, man, where I've done a few edibles here and there, man. I had to really sit down somewhere before I hurt myself. So I would really caution against, using psychedelic substances to enhance one's Qigong, Tai Chi, or yoga. I think cannabis, I think that, and it's not the edible form, but in this, just general smoking form, I think For yoga, I've heard of that. I haven't seen anybody or heard anybody doing that for Tai Chi or Qigong. Um, but I have heard people using that for yoga and got benefit. Maybe there's benefit to one, or maybe there's less caution to. I think with Qigong and Tai Chi, you're working more directly with the Qi. That's why the Qi is prominent in both of those words, Qigong or phrases, and Tai Chi. Yoga, using the prana, but people who do both will tell you that there's a more direct alignment with energy, with the life force. The universal life force is one personal life force with Qigong and Tai Chi, a bit more direct with yoga. Yoga requires more of the body, with Qigong and Tai Chi require a little less of the body. So, but overall, I would say people should really just get to enhance their energy flow and open up psychically from a psychic point of view, an intuitive point of view, psychedelic point of view, simply by doing the exercises as opposed to trying to complement that. Now, from a Chinese herbal point of view, they strongly suggest that people use reishi mushroom as well as some other Chinese herbs that actually will enhance one's intuitive and psychic abilities over time. It's not going to give you that quick shift where you're like, whoa, okay, man, the Red Sea's parting. Why am I seeing clouds out there and it's pitch dark and it's 12 o'clock midnight? What it would do over time, it will be a gradual, greater level of intuitive understanding, psychic opening, Shin expansion, if you will, by you and using those Chinese herbs. So that's why the Qigong and the Tai Chi practitioners have always used Chinese herbs, because it's a more gradual shift as opposed to that sudden shift, which can be very traumatic and dramatic. My instructor even said, there's certain times where you shouldn't even practice Qigong. He was saying when there's a thunderstorm out there, you should shy away from practicing Qigong, because lightning, obviously, the electrical charge that's going on in that environment is very high and intense. And so one who's cultivating certain energies doesn't want to do that, because mentally they could open something up that could be detrimental to them. So that's my take on it.
Thank you. And I heard you say earlier that tobacco smoking is harmful. I'm assuming you only mean commercial cigarettes. I mean pure organic mapacho from the Peruvian rainforest, which is the kind I smoke. That's perfectly healthy in many regards. I don't even inhale it. I just bring it in my mouth, which is the way it should have been done. Inhaling into your lungs is how you become addicted to nicotine. If you do it put in your mouth, it's not so addictive. Anybody could tell you that from experience. And also smoking tobacco, from what I've the reason I decided to I quit for 3 years, but then after I heard Akashic Records Andrew Bartz say that he smokes tobacco to help him communicate in 2 dimensions to people who he talks about some really crazy stuff, just like I do on some of my radio shows. And for people who don't understand any squat about this stuff, if he smokes tobacco and blows in their direction, it actually makes it easier to communicate the message to them, if you can believe that. Well, he's got the ability to read the Akashic Records, so I'm assuming there's truth to that. I have to think there's truth to that, because the Akashic Records say so, it must be true. But yeah, that's so I think that, just to clarify, that it depends on the type of tobacco, and pure organic mapacho, I believe, is the way to go with tobacco. But I want to we got about wanted to go till 9:11 because we started 7:11. So let's do a couple more subjects quickly on the fly here. I also take Aikido. I'm a second Q brown belt. I'd like to quickly get to first Q, but unfortunately I can only practice once a week, and my sensei told me that unless you can really come to practice more than once a week, then it's going to be kind of hard for me to want to promote you, because first Q, you have to show a little bit more consistency and more than once a week stuff. And I got so many other things going on, not just Tai Chi and yoga, among other things I take. But I've told my sensei, listen, even though from a standpoint of Aikido technique, taking Tai Chi and yoga may not help me from a standpoint of technique. I have no doubt that from a standpoint of Ki, which is the Japanese form of Chi, I have no doubt that taking Tai Chi and yoga can definitely help me in Aikido from a standpoint of manifesting and generating Ki, which is critical to Aikido. And I would think the same would have to be
Mm-hmm.
true with other martial arts. So am I right in my argument when I say that?
Absolutely, absolutely. I think even when you look at certain Buddhists or Shaolin, I mean, there's certain and even Bando, which is the a Burmese form of martial arts, which is Buddhist primarily in nature from a spiritual context. I mean, they do yoga. I remember my first instructor, Masi, he would have us do certain yogic postures and things to really open up our lower extremities to get the root energy moving. Because he understood that the Jing would not be activated and the Qi and the Shin fully for martial arts applications until that was done. So I totally agree with you that one can and will enhance the other. Yoga can very much enhance martial arts, Aikido. When you look at some of the movements, I'm sure in just about any martial arts system, it requires a great level of flexibility. So martial artists by nature, they have their own stretches and things of that nature. So when you think of yoga, obviously it's big on stretches. So it will greatly help the empowerment, the Ki or the Chi being able to flow at a much more strong level through the body from a martial technique point of view, or just a health maintenance standpoint from taking yoga. And as well as Tai Chi, the Tai Chi enhances one's Qigong, and Qigong can enhance will enhance one's Tai Chi. So it would be the same thing with the Aikido. Now I could see from maybe a philosophical standpoint, you might say, well, I just want you in on this one school of thought because I don't want you to get confused with how the philosophy and the context and the principles of Tai Chi with Aikido. Even though we know there's some similarities there, obviously there's a number of differences. So sometimes the senseis or the sifus will approach it from that point of view. But for the folks who have a level of awareness and they can see the similarities, it won't be an obstruction. If anything, it will be a boost to them maybe grasping the other quicker because they'll be able to sense things and be able to intuitively see the commonality between the two. So absolutely, I think one enhances the other.
Awesome. All right, one more question, and we'll call it a night. You say you're from D.C. Now, this gives me a little bit of an idea. I don't know if you want to take my idea to heart, but one thing people have said, if you're like really pissed off with the way things are going in the world, the best thing you can do for yourself is just change your own personal lifestyle, because the fact that we're infinite consciousness implies that the reality that you give out is what you get back. Now, there is a collective consciousness factor to it, but for the most part, if you do the best for yourself, you will have a great life. And anybody who does like yoga, Tai Chi, and Aikido like me and always tries to live a love-based reality is sure to have a good life. Now, one controversial aspect of like living your life to the fullest is whether or not it's in your best interest to try to suppress the control system, the archon control system of domination and control, the matrix reality as many call it, that suppresses our consciousness at all. And one would, while some argue that don't give that your attention because you're going to give it power, many people, including I, as in point of fact, would assert, well, no, you're not going. Well, yeah, that's true, but if you try to expose them and put a stop to their agenda with the intent of stopping their agenda, then as long as your intent is to stop their agenda for the sake of expanding consciousness and spreading love around Mother Earth and the rest of the cosmos and the multiverse, then you're not going to give them any power. Now, I ask you as a Tai Chi and Qigong instructor, like, do you think, with that being said, would it maybe not be such a bad idea to try to get a whole gathering of people to do Tai Chi and encircle some of the political buildings in in DC and maybe gather on some of the Masonic street lines and all that, because it was no accident that many of the street designs in DC were laid out in like sacred geometry and Masonic symbols. Get some people to gather on those and do meditations and Tai Chi, and do it with not with the intent of like giving them power, obviously, but do that with the intent of using the energy that you generate from those exercises to suppress fear and spread love and like crush the agenda of these bad guys, if you will, and these puppets in government. And then you're certainly going to do well for the rest of society if you do this. Now, this is a big task if you want to try it, and a lot of people may not want to take this up, and it would only work out if you got the schedule to do it and all. But with that being said, is okay, if people have the time and the resources to go about doing this, do you see it as being possible to use Tai Chi, yoga, meditation, Qigong, and all that in the way that I suggest? Put the energies around like a place like DC in order to suppress fear and spread love.
Absolutely, man. You're next level, Andrew, man. I appreciate you, man, asking that question. I agree with you 100%. Sometimes we and hey, whatever works for people. You'll find some folks who just say, hey, man, I'm just going to stay in my lane. I'm just going to do Qigong or yoga, and I'm just going to get a yoga mat and go to class and just walk. And if I get some incremental change and so forth and so on. I mean, hey, that's better than somebody bombing the planet or who knows, you're going on a random shooting spree or something like that. I mean, that's, hey, it's a step in the right direction. But there are ways to take these modalities and go far beyond just, one's own personal practice, if you will. And so that's why, it's clear, Tai Chi and Qigong practitioners, that you can do it alone and get benefit, but when you do it in a group, you get much greater benefit because the collective energy field is expanded. If you have an energy field around you and I have an energy field around me, then if you do it by yourself, you're benefiting your energy field, and some things around you. But if you get together and me and about a couple other folks and we have 5 people now, then all 5 of our energy fields are synchronized with a collective energy field that touches far more entities around us, trees and other people and so forth and so on. So to answer your question, absolutely. I think that's the way to go. Real quick, I remember watching a documentary. It's called The 60s, The Years That Shaped a Generation. And it's a phenomenal documentary. It's about, I don't know, an hour, maybe 90 minutes, something like that. If you haven't seen that, say check it out. And they talked about all the things that people were doing during the 60s to why that was such a transformative quantum leap period. And it wasn't just people marching saying, hey, we shall overcome. No. It was black folks doing it. It was the hippie white folks. It was the women. It was and it wasn't just going on in America. It was going on around the world. And so what was going on during that time period, that all things that were so transformative? Let's say there was nothing more empowering. I remember this guy, the psychologist from California. He said there's nothing more seductive and empowering than an idea whose time has come. So you had this convergence of ideas that so many people were probably thinking about, but they acted on them in a short time period, and you had all these shifts. The women wanted more power. They wanted to be empowered, not more power. They would say, hey, we don't want to be second class citizens. Obviously, black folks and people of color saying, hey, we're tired of this shit. You know what I'm saying? You had, the hippie white folks saying, hey, we don't agree with any of this. You know what I mean? And maybe our parents were still bought into and aligning with this old, outdated, archaic way of living. But, we want to teach them something as well. We want to get off the matrix. So you had all these people just stepping up and doing things. And in that documentary, it showed all of these hippies, man, who had surrounded, it was like thousands of them, surrounded the Pentagon. And they were chanting Om. Now, within a short amount of time, armed guards came running out of the Pentagon, breaking this thing up. So think about this now. If this had absolutely no effect on the Pentagon, you're talking about sacred geometry, if you will, they would have just let all those hippies there, thousands of hippies there, and just said, oh, man, these kids, they smoking something, man, we'll leave them alone. No, armed guards came running out, and they quickly shut that thing down. So there was something to that. And I would say in this day and time, when you have all this technology, as you said, the Matrix, those folks who think they're in power, the HARP and these things have far surpassed that, and chips and all these things that are, chemtrails, and they're, coming up with other stuff as we speak to try to suppress consciousness. We have to go beyond just, okay, Manifest is going to do Qigong in the park by himself. And that's great. That's, I'm transmuting my energies, I'm stepping up. But you talked about something earlier. You said, okay, can we not only empower ourselves, but then take this empowered energy and transmute the fear factor that they are promoting out there, to keep people in a self-preservation mode? We can do that collectively. Because, again, when my consciousness merged with your consciousness, there's already a collective consciousness, no longer just Manifest or Andrew. It's a collective here. So why not have enough people doing this? A mass of people are doing this. And we know what that scientifically does. You have a tipping point at some point. When you have a collective consciousness and you have a momentum going on, a domino effect, sooner or later, that then transmutes and changes the present collective consciousness that has been ingrained in society on the planet. So I agree with you, man. That is the next level. That's where it needs to go. Where we're doing yoga, not just because it feels good and we just want to do downward dog and we want to do asana, but we're channeling that energy, bringing up that kundalini, and through those asanas, pranas, and all those kinds of things, we're sending that energy out, and we're visualizing a new planet. We're visualizing one humanity in love and light and abundance. We're visualizing people moving beyond fear and embracing love. Visualizing that for America, throughout the, North America, South America, Africa, Europe, Australia, Asia, North Pole, South Pole. We're visualizing that. Same thing with Qigong. We're getting hundreds of people, thousands of people saying, okay, we're all going to synchronize and do Qigong, and whatever form that you're going to do, fine, but make sure love and light is the cornerstone and the foundation of those forms. And let's even say at 11 o'clock, 11, whatever, we're going to channel this energy, and we're going to say these mantras that we've cultivated this chi for the past 2 hours, and we're going to direct this now for the upliftment of humanity and the transformation of the planet and the cosmos. I agree with you, brother. That's where it needs to go.
Yeah, and you mentioned doing it at times, I think, like astrologically significant times, even if it's not like a good time to do drugs, like I said earlier, it may be a good time to do things like meditations and things like that, and Tai Chi and such, and that's why sunrise, sunset, moonrise, moonset, and also solstice, equinox alignments and all that are times when I try to schedule things like that. That's the one and only time I think it's okay to obsess about the illusion of time, when you're trying to schedule sessions like meditations and all during significant times and all that. So with that being said, bring this into an end. We got a little over 2 hours, and there's people with lousy attention spans out there, so we might as well try to keep it to that. So no offense to them, but hey, that's the way the world works. So I loved having you on. I hope I run into you at some point, because that was an event to remember, going through that Qigong session that we did, and it was very enlightening, enhancing, and all that. So if I didn't know that the garden party thing was going on for years, even though I'm one of the few white guys that goes there. I'm not going to let that be a hindrance to me going, or an excuse to me not go again. I'll definitely want to try to go again next year and for years to come. And if you're not there, well, I'm sure there are other people will be there that'll be able to make the most of that. And maybe I'll run into an event or something. I'll keep an eye on your website to see where you're going. So if I can run into you, by all means, I'll see if I can do so, because you were
well, hey, I appreciate that, Andrew. I do come just about every year. I expect to be there next year, and man, I tell you, I'm gonna talk to Viola. I mean, I know she's open-minded. I think we need to get to a place very soon where we're bringing in diverse people from all walks of life. I mean, that's the only way we're going to shift this thing. I think demographically, I think oftentimes black folks kind of they cultivate their energy and try to uplift things. White folks and and Asians, that kind of thing. But come on now, it's almost 8 billion people on the planet. We can't stay in our own corners, man. We're one family, one humanity, and we need to come together. But I'll close it with here, man. I'm going to be doing some things in various different cities, man, and let's definitely stay in touch on a regular basis. I love all the things that you're into, and I'm doing a number of things in D.C. So I would love to coordinate with you on how the Universal Love Movement can take hold in Philly. And when I come and do some workshops there, man, you can, I can partner with you. You can help get some people out. Maybe you can do some things relative to anything that you do, or keto or whatever. So, hey, man, let's work together, brother.
By all means. All right. Take care now. Enjoy the rest of your trek to infinite consciousness. Take care, man.
All
Bye-bye.
right, likewise.